Hello and welcome. My name is Tamara Claunch. I'm an integrative wellness and life coach, and I specialize in dementia risk reduction. Today I'm here on behalf of an organization that I volunteer extensively with, Dementia Alliance International. The topic of our discussion today is My Husband Has Dementia. Now what? When someone that we love, whether it's our spouse or a friend or our child or our parent, is diagnosed with dementia, we start to wear a lot of new hats that we've never worn before. We make a lot of decisions, a lot of choices that we've never had to make. It's a journey that unwinds and unfolds before us that we never imagined. My first experience with dementia was not a good one. My grandmother passed away in 2008 after living with it for about 10 years. Over those 10 years, I watched her transform from the most beautiful, classy, and engaging woman I had ever met into someone who didn't speak, only cried all the time, and would eat with her fingers at the dining table. And for a Southern woman born in 1920, eating with your fingers at the dining table was an absolute no-no. So I watched her become someone that she wouldn't have wanted to be. We had to make hard choices. If you're in this position today, which I assume you are because you're watching, my message today is one of hope. Because since then, my perspective on dementia and the next steps to take has changed radically. I wish that I had known then what I know now, because I think that my grandmother's life could have been radically different if we had taken a different approach from the moment of diagnosis onwards. So thank you for allowing me to share with you a little bit of my journey today, in the hopes that I may bring you some hope for the next steps on your journey. Getting a diagnosis of dementia can be absolutely devastating, both for the person that's been diagnosed and for those of us that love them. And it's important to remember that. It's a time of high emotions for everybody. It's a time of fear and worry and anxiety and anger and all of these high emotions that are in you and in your partner that you love. And when these emotions aren't processed fully, they're not communicated, they're not worked through, these can settle into our body and become physical pain, sickness. Maybe we can't sleep, or we have a headache all the time, or we aren't hungry, or we're eating too much, but we have physical results from these high emotions that we're experiencing. Psychologically, diagnosis impacts us significantly. The person that has been diagnosed, putting ourselves in their shoes and imagining or asking them, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? How are you handling this? Maybe they're questioning, how am I going to be me if I'm not allowed to do the things that I've always done? If I'm not able to do the things that I've always done, am I still myself? Can I still fill my roles? Am I still important? And as someone who loves them, looking at this relationship that we've built and thinking, well, how is this going to change if I have to do new things for them that I've never done, and they can't do the things that they've always done? How does that change our relationship and our dynamics, the dynamics of power and balance and the communication channels? Diagnosis impacts all of this. And spiritually, there may be a feeling of disconnect from God, or a crisis of faith, maybe questioning one's purpose in life. As we have all these high emotions and we're not feeling well and we're having psychological torment, and what happens to us socially? We isolate. We pull back. We isolate because we don't feel good and we're not happy and we don't know what to do. We're suffering. So we may isolate from our daily activities, our friends, our communities. We may isolate from our partner in the home. We may isolate from our other family members. So diagnosis can be socially isolating as well. And there is definitely a financial impact with a diagnosis of dementia. Dementia typically has a very long progression, sometimes 10, 15 years. And the way that we currently approach dementia, by immediately treating it like it's an end-stage situation, even though somebody may have a lot of capabilities and abilities, and it may just be an early stage. But the point is, it's a long condition, and because people that have been diagnosed are often encouraged to just withdraw from life and get their affairs in order, maybe they stop working. There's significant financial impact today and in the future. It may be more difficult to get insurance with a diagnosis of dementia. You may have costs of having in-home care or long-term care insurance or medications or assistive devices. Being diagnosed with dementia impacts all of it. It impacts our emotional state, our mental state, our physical body, our spiritual self. It impacts how we interact with so much of the world. A lot of this, to be truthful, is because dementia is diagnosed differently than anything else. But it's important to remember that the diagnosis affects the person who is diagnosed and those that love them in all of these ways. Keeping this in mind helps us be cognizant and supportive of our partner while taking care of ourselves. Throughout the course of my grandmother's illness, we largely felt hopeless and helpless. As Kate Swaffer says, dementia is the only terminal illness I know of where people are told to go home and give up rather than fight for their lives. And boy, was this true for my grandmother. And if someone you love has been diagnosed with dementia, I'm imagining that you may have experienced this prescribed disengagement as well. What do I mean by prescribed disengagement? This is a term coined by Kate Swaffer. Think about when you get a prescription from a doctor, back in the old days when they were all written on a pad of paper. That prescription would be, here, this is what's wrong with you, we're going to give you this, and this is what's going to make you better. This is how to treat. This is what you need. The only thing that is prescribed consistently when people are diagnosed with dementia is disengagement from life as you know it. Quit work if you're still working. Go home and get your affairs in order. Make sure that you have end-of-life plans and try to live out the rest of your days as well as you can. There's no hope. There's no options. This is how most people experience diagnosis. But over the past decade, I have come to believe that there is a different path. There is more that can be done besides disengaging when someone has been diagnosed with dementia. So we have this prescribed disengagement. We have this stigma around dementia. And what I want to share with you today is a message of hope. What Dementia Alliance International is hope in action. Since my grandmother passed away, I researched and I studied and I learned and I met people, and I came to believe, academically at least, in theory, that there actually is a lot that can be done to improve the quality of life for people living with dementia. There are different ways of going about treatment in addition to pharmacological, in addition to drugs. There's hope for a life well lived. But it wasn't until the 5th birthday party for Dementia Alliance International that I actually saw this hope that I believed in my heart. I saw that hope in action. I saw it in real life. I got to attend this birthday party because I had been invited by Kate Swaffer, who had recently interviewed for a piece I was doing on people living well with a diagnosis of dementia, and she invited me to their 5th birthday party. DAI was started almost 6 years ago now by 8 people with young onset dementia around a conference table, and 6 years later, there are thousands of members in 49 countries. This was their 5th birthday party, and so I didn't know what to expect. I had never been to an online birthday party before. I couldn't even imagine how that sort of thing would work. So I called in at the time that I was asked to and joined in. And over the course of the next hour, I heard from people all over the world who are living with dementia. One by one, they said who they were, what diagnosis they have, and the difference that DAI has made in their life. What I saw that day was people all over the world that have lives with meaning and purpose. They have joy, they have connection, they have community. Yes, they're living with difficult diagnoses. They are also people, living as people in an environment free of discrimination, free of stigma, where they are valued and included. I saw hope for all people with dementia that day. I saw hope for your family members. I saw hope for people like my grandmother. I saw hope for people who want to fight for their lives, who want the chance to fight for their life as they want to live it. DAI is this hope. One of the most important things I have learned in my work with Dementia Alliance International is the value of seeing dementia as disability, the symptoms of dementia as newly acquired cognitive disabilities. By taking a disability perspective, we really help to change the attitude to dementia. We help to enable people to be independent. We help to reduce that stigma and to counteract that prescribed disengagement. Thinking in terms of disabilities, when somebody has a physical disability and they need a wheelchair, we adapt environments so that they can be successful. Maybe we put wheelchair ramps in their home, or we widen their doorways, and they can get around and live their life and be successful in their chosen environment. It's the same out in the community, where there would be ramps going into buildings so that people with physical disabilities can go about their daily lives and be independent. In the same way, we think in terms of cognitive ramps when it comes to cognitive disabilities, to acquired cognitive disabilities. It's all about enabling people to be successful. It starts with asking the person. Asking them, what would you like some help with? Would this be useful for you? I have an idea. Maybe this could help with some of these changes that you're experiencing. If I had a magic wand and I could go back 20 years into my grandmother's house, how much different would her life have been if she had cognitive ramps in place to enable her success in her home environment with cognitive disabilities? Those days when she had trouble remembering how to get dressed, which order to put the clothes on. What if she had a laminated reminder card that had pictures of how to get dressed? So those days that she was having trouble, she could look at the card and remember and have those the visual cues that would enable her to successfully get dressed on her own. This list here, these practical tips, these are things that people with dementia actually use in their daily lives. Not all people use all things, but this list has been created by people living with dementia. One of the great things about Dementia Alliance International is it gives an opportunity, it gives a forum for people with dementia to have their voices heard and to impact things like practical tips for care partners, for care providers, to read, digest, and hopefully use in their experiences with their own loved one. So it's not just an academic coming and saying, hey, this would probably be useful. This list has actually been developed by people living with dementia, and these are things that help them. One of the easiest things that I recommend to people is name tags. Very often people have trouble remembering names when people come over to visit, when family or friends, or we're going out into social situations. This can create so much isolation for the people with dementia. If they're having trouble remembering names, it kind of sets this awkwardness in place. If this is a challenge for your spouse or partner or loved one, those old-fashioned stick-on name tags with a big black marker writing in capital letters, clear print that's easy for them to see, and offering this to visitors when they come over. And that helps the person that's being visited or that's going out into a social situation. It helps them to be successful. It sets them off on the right foot. So when it comes to these practical tips, talk to your partner. See if any of this sounds like it might be useful for them. It always starts with asking the person. Communication is another area that we can experience challenges when we are caring for or loving someone with dementia. So when it comes to communicating with people with dementia, what we see a lot is people talk very loudly or very slowly, even if people don't have hearing problems. And so we need to communicate based on the person that is receiving the communication. And remember that they're an adult, not a child. And so talking to them, treating them like they're an adult, looking them in the eyes when we're communicating with them, asking questions about preferences and choices is key for independence, dignity, and a sense of self. Now, as dementia progresses, communication channels may change. Some people lose the ability to speak, especially if they are not accessing any speech therapy services. So how do we speak with someone, communicate with someone when their ability to speak is diminished? Well, we have to get creative. I think back to my grandmother, and she cried for the last 3 years of her life. That's pretty much all she did. She didn't talk at all. And I think back and I wonder how much better would her life have been, her quality of life, her experience every day, if somebody had just put a board in front of her with yes and no on it and asked her to point to yes or no. Are you hungry? Yes, no. Are you tired? Yes, no. Are you in pain? Yes, no. So getting creative and enabling communication with this person with dementia throughout the course of their progression is critical. And it's not so tough to do. It's just a matter of getting creative, using less words as the condition progresses, because sometimes there's significant challenges with processing verbal communication. So less words, more pictures, more nonverbal communication, more gestures. When in social situations, it can be helpful to align with your partner up front. So if you're in a conversation and they're struggling, do they want you to provide some suggestions, some cueing, some words to help them stay on track, or would they rather just stay quiet and be doing their own thing? So remembering that they're an adult and that they have a desire to communicate, and those communication channels can change as the ability to speak is impacted. So, practically speaking, communication is another way that you can make a big difference in the lived experience, help counteract this stigma, and help counteract this prescribed disengagement by encouraging your loved one to remain fully engaged, fully involved with the world around them. Language is another area where we can practically make a real difference in the lived experience of the person living with dementia. This is because language does far more than just describe reality. Language prescribes reality as we experience it. If we change the language around dementia, the words of suffering and people not being all there, then we help make dementia not such a difficult word. We help to remove the stigma around it. This negative language is pervasive. It's in the media, it's in popular culture, and it's in our medical providers community. It's up to us as individuals to help drive change around the language of dementia. Remembering that the end goal when someone is living with dementia is that they have a good quality of life. It's about focusing on quality of life. And we don't tell people that they're suffering from dementia. We don't tell others that our loved one is suffering from dementia. They may have moments where they're experiencing challenges and pains and experiences that are related to the dementia, but it's not up to us to label them as sufferers. So this is a practical language guideline that has been developed by people with dementia. And so taking into account that the language we use when we speak to someone with dementia, or we speak about someone with dementia, or when doctors are speaking to them, or family members or friends, it's up to us to really counteract this stigma, this prescribed disengagement, by being cognizant of the language that we use, using language that empowers and enables rather than disables our loved ones. Managing dementia as a chronic progressive condition can be a way of reducing the risk around dementia. Dementia risk reduction can be both prescriptive and proactive. So when somebody has already been diagnosed with dementia, practically speaking, approaching their dementia diagnosis as if it were any other chronic progressive condition and seeing what can we do from a lifestyle perspective to help you be better for longer. It's no different than heart disease, cancer, diabetes. The advice is basically the same. It's food, it's sleep, it's stress management, it's social connections, it's purpose, it's having a reason to get out of bed in the morning. All of these things help people have a better quality of life and be more well from a mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual standpoint. So taking dementia and lumping it in with, okay, it's just like other conditions. We can eat better and have fewer symptoms. We can sleep better and have fewer symptoms. Working with your healthcare professionals to develop a wellness program to help your loved one have some control over their wellness as their condition progresses. So if I had a magic wand, going back again 20 years with my grandmother, I would have insisted that the doctors do more than just send her home with a prescription. I would have had them look at her blood work. I would have had them do extensive blood work and look at things like markers of chronic inflammation, how are her hormone levels, other vitamins and minerals in her body, and has she been exposed? Does she have arsenic or lead or any other toxins in her body that we can possibly have some removal or some detoxification done? Protecting the gut immune barrier, the blood-brain barrier, and really working to knock down this chronic inflammation. There's a lot of evidence that shows chronic inflammation as a root cause for most chronic progressive conditions. Chronic inflammation is a natural process. It's like the police force in your body going out to stop invaders. But when our bodies stay in this heightened state of response for too long because we're overly stressed, we're eating inflammatory foods, we're creating this heightened state of emergency for a long period of time, and that's when it becomes chronic inflammation, and that's when it becomes dangerous for our health. So we can reduce inflammation naturally. There's a lot of ways to go about doing this. Speaking with your healthcare professional about how can we reduce inflammation through means like diet and exercise. Physical exercise is an evidence-based intervention for dementia. There's a lot of evidence that shows that physical exercise can help reduce the risk of developing dementia, and it can help slow the progression for some people. So making sure that these barriers in our body that are there to protect toxins from getting into our blood or toxins from getting into our brain, making sure those barriers are working well. All of these physical components of risk reduction. At the end of the day, the most important thing is having a reason to get out of bed in the morning, having those roles, having purpose, having connections. That's how we can really help our loved ones as they face this new world of dementia, is helping them to be a full human being, no matter what. So taking into account these practical approaches, these little changes that can make a big difference to help reduce the stigma that your loved one is experiencing and to do something different than prescribed disengagement. Building a village is up to you. There are going to be other people that are involved with your loved one's care. There are family, there are friends, there are medical professionals, and there are people in the community that can really make a big difference in the lived experience as your loved one and you progress through this next stage of your journey. Taking into account all of these things that you've learned today, really working to build a village, a community of people that value and support your loved one's rights, their individual autonomy, and an improved quality of life. Being the advocate for your loved one to demand that other people see them as human beings deserving of independence, dignity, respect, that they have rights, that they can have a good quality of life. This is not the normal perspective that people take with dementia. One of us at a time, each of us with our loved ones, every day, the words that we use, the ways that we communicate, and how we help enable their success in their daily life. We live by example, and we share with others our hope and our perspective and encourage them to approach our loved one with the same attitude. A little bit more about Dementia Alliance International. Why do I volunteer for them? Why am I here on behalf of them speaking to you today? Dementia Alliance International makes a real difference in real people's lives. People all over the world that are living with a diagnosis of dementia have a hope and purpose and connections and are regaining their power. And so my work with DAI, I believe, is helping to improve the lived experience of people all over the world today and in the future. I encourage you to speak with your loved one about them joining Dementia Alliance International. The only way to be a member of DAI is to have a medically confirmed diagnosis of dementia. There are weekly online peer-to-peer support groups for people living with dementia, which are incredibly powerful to help people navigate this new world that they are experiencing and to connect with others who are sharing some of their same experiences. So Dementia Alliance International works at this peer-to-peer support group level all the way up to international advocacy and policy work to help protect the rights, both human rights and disability rights, of people with dementia all over the world. So I hope that you will visit our website and learn more about DAI. We have all sorts of opportunities for care providers, for partners of people living with dementia to join in on, and we have a great Facebook group. So please consider supporting Dementia Alliance International, whether it's with your time or whether it's with your donations. We do a lot of good work all over the world, and we're really working towards a world where all people are valued and included, and this includes your loved one. Membership of Dementia Alliance International is free for people with a medically confirmed diagnosis of dementia. This membership gives them access into all of these wonderful services provided by Dementia Alliance International. Please visit us on social media and on our website on Facebook. Join us, support us, and see what happens next. There's exciting stuff going on at Dementia Alliance International. And check out our YouTube channel. It is fantastic and full of practically useful information and more details about this prescribed disengagement, the stigma. This channel is produced by people with dementia, and it's about people with dementia, and it's for people with dementia. And those of us that love and support people that are living with this condition can really get a lot of practical, useful, and inspiring information off of this YouTube channel. So I encourage you to follow us on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope that you have found some hope. And remember, see the person, not the dementia.